Welcome back once again to the Inquisitor Podcast with me, Marcus Cauchi. Today my guest is Andy Weins. Andy is a veteran of the US military. He's an author, a speaker, and a business owner. And he's written a book which grabbed my attention, which is Words Fucking Matter. And the reality is they do. They tell us what's really going on under the surface. And most people use language as a way of deflecting, a way of avoiding. And today, Andy and I are going to have a full and frank conversation where we're going to get down and dirty around the use of language and what it tells us and what you can do in order to gain greater control over your mind by the language that you use. So without any further ado, Andy, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Excellent. Andy, would you mind giving the audience 60 seconds on your history so that we can get a sense of how you got to this point?
Yep, fourth generation entrepreneur. Grew up on my grandparents' farm in the summer. Worked on job sites with my dad pretty much as long as I can remember. So being in and out of people's homes and running family businesses is my background. I spent 10 years in corporate America working for small businesses and finding my way. I've been in the military over 20 years now. 10 years ago, I decided to get out on my own as an entrepreneur full time and the junk removal industry. So I clean people's houses out. And along the way, I realized some things about myself. I'm a mass resiliency trainer in the Army, so I learned the power of our thoughts and our thought patterns. And so I wrote my first book on words. I wrote my second book on numbers. My superhuman strength is nuance. So I look for the one number, the one word that make the story more or most important. You know, people say, "Oh, you love details." No, I hate details, and I love specifics. So that's where I'm coming from, and I'm really excited to talk things through with you today.
Excellent. Okay, so let's talk about language first of all, and I'd like to get down and dirty straight away. So when things have gotten stressful for you historically, what words do you notice yourself using that you just don't trust anymore?
Oh, I love blaming other people. You know, Brene Brown talks about shame quite a bit, and what shame is your body or your brain's way of dealing with stressful situations with the least amount of effort. And so when you have shame, it's because there's a gap between what you really want and what you currently have. And so what do? We instantly go blame, excuse, or denial. Well, I really don't want it that much. Well, it's like, yeah, you do, right? Or excuse, oh, it's just too difficult. Or blame, if this person or that person or they or them or you or anybody else. And so I had this recently, with my wife where I found myself having full conversations with her in my head where I use the word you quite a bit. And right. That's it. And so when I start using you, because is there reality behind it? Absolutely. She's a contributing factor. She's 50% of this marriage. There's two people involved and she's one of them. And it's real simple for me to blame her for everything. And then it's a quick language key that I taught. It's like, okay, well, where's my DNA? What responsibility do I have in all this? And then all of a sudden, when I ask that question, it's like, well, I might be 1% responsible for the situation at hand, And so that's it. The same with excuses. Excuses are merely obstacles that we've yet to navigate. It's like I want to get to work on time, but it's like, well, what's the but? And what can you do to get to work on time? And so that's what it's all about. I'll tell people my why. My why in this world is to change the world one word at a time. Because when you change one word in one sentence, it changes everything else you tell yourself thereafter.
Well, I'm going to double up and go for two words that I think most of us use and they're harmful, and they are but and just. But deletes everything that came before it. I love you, but.
Yep.
And then just deletes and negates and minimizes everything that follows it. I'm just calling to. And
okay, so here's what's interesting. In my book, Words Fucking Matter, I have 13 shit words and phrases. Should, can't, won't, don't, right? And just and but are both of them. And what I say about but is it's two conflicting ideas and only one of them is true. So I like that. Everything after. I love what you said about just, because I say just justifies the bullshit that's about to happen. Well, I was just, and then whatever bullshit, whatever diarrhea of the mouth comes after that. Oh, you like that? So say it again. Just does what? Just says everything
just
after is
diminishes everything that comes next, and it minimizes. So I'm just calling because I'm calling. You don't have to use just, and you don't have to then justify it with a because.
That's it. I love that.
So what I'd like to do then is maybe go a little bit deeper. You kind of touched on it with your inner dialogue where your wife isn't actually involved. Yep. What are the phrases that sound responsible, but usually means I'm avoiding something?
As soon as I assign ownership to somebody else.
Okay.
Right? Because is there truth? Okay, I have a business partner. Is there truth? We had a situation recently with our business where I want to take on a new product line, and I'm hard charging, and I've got it to like I'm at the 1 yard line, American football. I'm at the 1 yard line, like right there. The end zone's right there. What is it in a rugby? Right, it's the try. Right, that's your big right. So you got to hit the ball on the ground. So you're like in air, about to hit the ball on the ground, and all of a sudden he's acknowledging an obstacle. And so, is there truth behind what he's saying? Absolutely. And what do? I want to instantly minimize where he's coming. Like, oh, it's not a big deal. Well, hold on. It's a big deal to him. So instead of saying it's not a big deal, I shifted to, okay, well, what is the big deal? What is the problem? What I also find is with people, and myself included, when I start complaining, what I'm really saying is I want this, right? So if I think to myself, oh, my wife doesn't do this enough, right? What I'm really saying is I want my wife to do this more. And that's the difference. Is there truth behind the second half of the sentence? Absolutely. I want my wife to do the dishes more, right? Actually, I was doing the dishes right before I came out here. Right. So if I say my wife never does the dishes, what I'm saying is I want my wife to do the dishes. So the dishes being done, that's the subject, right? That's true. That's an unmet desire. So I have two ways of doing it. I can either set expectations on her, or I can state my desires. And the truth is still the same, that the dishes didn't get done. With your spouse, often, listen to how you talk to your spouse, right? I wish you would, or you should never, or I can't believe you, right?
You made me.
Take that as I want, right? Hey, I want you to not call me out in public, right? You always say stuff to me in public. It's like, hey, I want you to wait till we get home to give me some feedback. Oh, okay. And now I've taken ownership of the gap. I've taken ownership of my emotions, and I've also taken ownership of the outcome. And now your wife, your husband might say, oh, wow, you know what? I never realized. Okay. When you start with, you never, how much are they listening? Right? Not a lot. So listening to myself internally, where's the gap? What's the emotion behind it? And then articulating that in words. Another great framing. I said this on stage a couple of years ago in Vegas. I was explaining this about employees, and I said this woman was complaining about her husband. I said, use this language. She goes, if my husband ever used that language, I would give him whatever he wants. And this is the language. I feel this way when you insert anything. So, hey, I feel loved when you come by and give me a touch on my shoulder. Okay. Also, hey, I feel disrespected when I say hi to you and you don't look up from your phone. Right? Because the inverse of that is something like, you fucking bitch, you ruined my life. Right? Because that's what normally comes out.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is the same thing. You have an unmet desire. And the desire is different than an expectation. And a desire is what I want. And expectation is what I want from you. And as soon as you start putting expectations on other people, you are setting yourself for a life of failure, because people are not put on this earth to meet your expectations. That's not why they're here.
It's interesting. I mean, you talk about want versus need.
Yes.
Where has saying "I need you to" helped you to delay a decision you didn't want to face?
What's interesting, in my book, I talk about how needs are greater than wants. Also, when I wrote my book, I said that 85% of my book is correct, 15% is incorrect, and I'm not sure what is what. Then I read a book, 10x is easier than 2x, Dan Sullivan. And so this, I struggled with this want versus need. And I realize now, I do a workshop on conflict. I need is starting to get down this denial life, this almost delusional life, where people say, well, I need a six-figure salary. Okay. Why? Well, I need it. Why? Right. And now, again, those are unrealistic expectations you put on yourself. And needs, what Dan argues in 10x is easier than 2x, and this is what got my mind to shift. Needs often need to be justified. I need this because, right? And there has to be this reason. I need a six-figure salary, let's say, because I have a house payment and I have a certain status and I blah 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 blah, right? And now all of a sudden you've painted yourself into this victim corner of what you need, because without this, you'll die, right? Because that's what needs are. Without, you die. Okay. Now when you say, hey, I want a six-figure salary. Why? Because I want it. Now, wants have no justification when external. And even with yourself, you say, hey, I want to go on a vacation. Why? Because I want it. Okay, well, what are you willing to do to get that? Are you willing to sacrifice that Starbucks every day? Are you willing to work extra hours? Are you willing to, to take on a second job, right? What are you willing to do because you want, right? And now all of a sudden, now that conflict becomes internal. And then the question becomes, which want is greater? Your want for comfort, the short-term satisfaction, or your want for this thing that's greater? And what ends up happening is 80% of people will settle for the short-term satisfaction. 80% of people are growth-minded, or are fixed-minded, rather. 80%, here in America, 83% of Americans do not have goals. 83. 14% of Americans have goals and never write them down. 3% of Americans have goals and write them down. So which want is greater? Your want to go on vacation, your want to start a company, your want to write a book, or your want to sleep in?
Well, I think you hear people say things and they say one thing, but often it's to justify the decision they've already made,
Yeah.
Even though they're pretending they haven't. Can you give some examples of that pattern?
Yeah, people talk about results, not the work. And the only place that results come before work is in the dictionary. People want results, they want rewards. So I love Shark Tank. You guys have what is it? Oh, it's just Shark
Dragon's
Tank
Den.
UK. Or is it
Dragon's
Lion's
Den.
Den? Lion's Den. Okay.
Dragon's Den.
Oh,
Yeah.
Dragon's Den, thank you. Love Dragon's Den. It's interesting. Your guys' format's different. Your narrators talk a lot more versus Americans. So it's an interesting take on the two shows. Anyhow, they'll say, okay, we're going to give you $100,000. What are you going to do with it? I'm going to increase my marketing. Okay. I'm going to get more sales. Okay. I'm going to, run operations. Okay. And you'll listen and they're like, those people don't get investments. The people that get investments, they say, okay, what are you going to do with $100,000? Okay. We're going to get this influencer and this influencer is going to make these posts and these posts are going to drive more traffic and this traffic is going to get us, lower our customer acquisition cost. Or, hey, the $100,000, there's a $50,000 piece of equipment and we're going to rent this warehouse. We're going to bring the piece of equipment in. And when we do that, we will get the desired results. So when people talk about what they're going to do, not what they're going to get, they're more likely to be successful. That's the focus on the work, not the result, because the results happen. So I've heard this where, I'm going to lose 20 pounds. Okay, sounds good. What are you doing? Well, I'm going to lose 20 pounds. Well, what are you doing? Are you changing your diet? Are you changing your fitness? Are you waking up early? What's your water intake? Now we can have a conversation about something you can concrete do, because otherwise you say, well, it's been 6 weeks. I haven't lost the weight. Well, why not? Well, I tried a lot of things.
You said that people talk about results to justify decisions they've already made.
Yep.
Where have you done that recently? I'm curious.
Oh, I do it all the time, right? I'm a Vistage speaker now. I've been talking about becoming a Vistage speaker for the last 2 years, and it wasn't until the last 6 months. Because what was the first step? I had to write a new keynote because the keynote I had wasn't good enough for Vistage. So for 2 years, I talked about, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and it wasn't until I sat down and said, okay, I'm going to sit down with a guy I knew and said, okay, what's a good keynote? And then him and I came up with some ideas of what a new keynote would be. And now, right, I want to get booked. And instead of saying, okay, I'm going to sit around and wait, and I want to be, I have a goal. I have a goal this year. And in order to hit that goal, I got to do the work. I get to do the work. I get to do the work to hit the goal. And the more I fixate on the goal, the less I fixate on the work. And so fixating on the 3 tasks will get me to the result. Fixating on the result will get me nowhere.
So look at the right end of the problem.
Yep.
Listen to your internal dialogue and your justification, and then do the work.
Yeah. I say this all the time, and people look at me like I'm nuts. Work is the reward. One of the opening lines in my book talks about work, right? There's that old adage. I love old phrases that do not serve us because people believe them. They've heard them long enough, they believe them. So there's that old adage that says, when you do something you love, you'll never work a day in your life. Right? That is beyond BS. And the reason I say that is because work is a beautiful thing. Why are we trying to discount work? Anything worth achieving takes work. The Winter Olympics are coming up, right? That's a lot of work those athletes have put in all these years for like downhill skiing. What does it last? Like a minute, like 30 seconds? You know what I mean? Like they put in years and years and years and years of work for the opportunity to get there. And now we live in this society where it's like, work is bad. It's like, no, work is a beautiful thing. And so what I tell people, that people look at me like I'm nuts, I say, work is the reward. Like, what do you mean? Okay, where are you going? Let's say we'll take someone in corporate America. Where are you going? Well, I want to make more money. Okay. All right. So in order to make more money, what do you have to do? Well, I have to get more customers. I have to get a promotion. It's like, okay, well, that takes work. And guess what? When you get promoted in a company, it's more work, not less work. When you get more customers, it's more work, not less work. And then when you have the money, guess what? You're going to buy a bigger house. I'm going to tell you something. Bigger house is more work. Vacations are more work. Everything is more work. And so when you fall in love with the process of work, when you convince yourself that you love what you're doing, then you're going to seek more opportunities for work. You're going to find more opportunities to do more, maybe with less. You're going to delegate more so you can do more, because more work is a beautiful thing. The more you produce, the more you give, the more you put into this world, the more you get out. And we're living in a society now where it's more like, well, how do you get the most with the least amount of effort? And you know what? That works for like the 1% of 1% of 1% of people that hit it big on TikTok, right? Look at Mr. Beast. He's one of the biggest social media stars. And why? Because he put the work in for years. He figured out what are the best thumbnails, what's the best length, what is the best grab, what is the best content. Because he put the work in. He didn't just wake up one day and be like, all right, I'm going to be Mr. Beast and make tens of millions of dollars. He put in the work.
Well, the Beatles are a classic example of this. 8 years of working 12-hour days practicing
Yep.
meant that they became an overnight success. But there was a lot of grind, and they were so in tune with each other that you could put them into any context and they'd play and it would be fantastic. And I think it's important to pick up on something. You said work is the reward, but that only means something after you've admitted that what you were using in terms of goals, standards, or language to avoid. And if you say it too early, it becomes a virtue signal. But
Yeah.
said at the right moment, it indicts the listener. And you're using it as a correction. And your
Yes.
job is to turn it into a mirror.
Yeah. So here's one thing we say in the military all the time. False motivation is better than no motivation. I'd rather say the thing before I really believe it to kick myself. There's that old adage, right? Fake it. I have to
Fake it till
recall.
you make it.
Fake it till you make it. Okay. I hate that.
Mhm.
Right? No, don't fake it. Right? Face it. Face it while you make it. And those two words make a huge difference in that sentence.
Absolutely.
Face it, right? Face it. You know what? I've walked on stage before. I didn't fake the funk. I gave them the performance that I was capable of giving. I faced an audience of 500 people. I told a group 2 weeks ago at a workshop, I said, participation is key. I asked a question. I stood there for about 30 seconds. Nobody, these are high-level CEOs. Nobody flinched. No one wanted to be the first one to speak. And I said to them, hey, everybody, I said, I've stood in front of 500 people and waited 2 minutes for someone to speak up. I said, so how uncomfortable you want to make it? I can do it, right? Did I fake it? No, I faced it. I stood there on a stage in front of 500 people. I've stood in front of a dozen CEOs, deadpan, waiting for someone to, right? Is that uncomfortable? Absolutely. Is that a risk? Absolutely. And then it's not till you make it, because only in retrospect can you look back and say, oh, that was the defining moment. A lot of people are thinking they're going to have this viral moment in their lives. And it's going to be like this magical mountaintop that it's very clear and obvious, I made it. No, only in retrospect do we know those defining moments in our life. So along the way, while you do it, do it. Put the work in. In retrospect, they'll say, well, what didn't you know? Oh, it was right then and there. All right, got it. Did you know it at the time? Most people will say no. It's only in reflection that we realize what are those defining moments in our lives.
Interesting. I think a challenge that many people face is that they use words to deflect and procrastinate. In
100%.
those 2 years when you were avoiding producing your keynote,
Yep.
what were the excuses you were using?
I'm not ready. I'm not good enough. I need new material. No one's going to like it. I have a company to run. I don't have the time. Oh yeah. I spent 7 years, 7 years full of excuses and blame from when I first started my side hustle until I became a full-time business owner. 7 years. Right. And my excuses then were I don't have the capital, I don't have the knowledge, I don't have the education, I don't have a business partner. So what did I do? I knocked on all those things. I went and got a bachelor's degree. My brother became my business partner. I saved money to have capital. I did all these things and I started business and then soon, like the first month in business, I was like, I didn't need any of that shit. All I needed was a mindset shift. A mindset shift would have got me as far as a bachelor's degree. And I'll stand by that now. Right. It took me 6 years to get a degree. Had I started my business at the same time that I started my college career, I would have been a lot further along after 6 years than going to school.
Yeah, sadly. I think too many people have fallen into the trap of going through education rather than educating themselves.
Yeah,
And
100%.
the net result of that is that they are looking for a crutch. They're
Yeah.
not looking to take ownership and accountability. And I'm curious, I mean, how much do you think that delay cost you over the course of
Oh,
your...
I justified at least $1 million. $1 million, $1 million with simple hillbilly math says it cost me at least $1 million on the bottom line, cash in my pocket, and more,
Hmm.
at least.
So let's start looking at language that drives positive outcomes.
Mhm.
So if we think about...
Lucy, it's because I've given myself permission. If is one of those shit words that I do not use, I avoid it. So better is when. There's two other words you can put in. And when I read books now, I read it. I no longer read if. I read when. When, time bound, whether, or you put the word whether when it's a conflicting point. If this happens versus this, well, whether this or whether that, right? Most times you place if with when, changes the sentence.
Fair enough. So when we think about
Hmm.
positive language, and I'm not talking about fluffy
No,
motivation
no.
shite.
Bullshit. Yeah.
I'm talking about real language
Mhm.
that is, what's the word I'm looking for? Instrumental, that is meaningful.
Yep.
What type of language do we use when we are really driving change in behavioral
Mhm.
and execution so that we can perform to our full potential consistently over time?
Yep. About 2 years ago, I came up with the six most powerful statements. And it all starts with how you start the sentence. Because when you start the sentence right, your feet will follow, right? The rest of the sentence will be impacted. And so I like what you said. You're looking for a word there, right? Whether instrumental, intrinsic, something there. And so here's the left or right. It's a choice. With all language choices, we have two choices. Either it is growth minded or fixed minded. It's coming from a place of abundance or scarcity, coming from a place of love or hate, coming from the place of victor or victim. Right. So people use different things. Victor victim is pretty is used quite a bit these days, right? Because we have this victim society. For people that are more religious context, it's more love and hate. Business people think of scarcity versus abundance. And I love growth minded versus fixed minded. We're saying the same thing. It's a choice of sentences. And here are the six most powerful statements that I've come up with in alphabetical order. And interestingly enough, in alphabetical order, they're the most powerful when used in conjunction. So the first sentence is I am. Remind yourself who you are. The beautiful thing about I am also is you can also put in boundaries. I am not going to do this, which is different than I can't, I won't, I don't. No, I can. Sometimes I will, and sometimes I do have capacity. But you know what? I'm going to say right now, or not but, right, comma, but there we go. I am going to say right now what my boundaries are. I am this. And also, this is that false motivation. You know what? I am a smart business owner. I'm going to plant that. I'm going to say that right now. I'm going to declare it. Second sentence, I can. Be truthful in what you are capable of doing. Because all too often, be like, I can't do this, I can't do that. And I'll sit and I'll listen, especially when I'm doing my consulting practice. I'll listen to all the excuses. And it's like, okay, what can you do? Well, nothing. Really? Nothing? Well, I suppose I can sit down and talk, but they're not going to listen. Okay, hold on. You can talk to them, right? Yeah, I can sit down and talk. Okay, let's start there. Maybe there's a new piece of information that you haven't found yet. So start with I can. Third sentence, I feel. Your emotions matter. There's something like 20,000 processes or neurons that are processing information in your brain per second, and there's 4 million processing in your gut at the same time.
Mhm.
The way you feel about something absolutely matters. When I teach people the language and the use of language, I lean in heavy on feelings. I did a workshop a couple of weeks ago, and this woman's like, well, it doesn't matter what I feel. I go, hold on. Yes, your feelings matter. Here I am. I'm 6'4", 220 pounds, tattooed, t-shirt, wearing camo pants, telling a woman that her feelings matter. Not exactly what she thought was going to happen at 9 o'clock in the morning in a boardroom, right? So I feel. What is the emotion behind your I am and I can statement? How do you feel right in this moment? Do you feel excited? Do you feel frustrated? Right? There's no wrong answers. Fourth sentence. I know. I have empirical data. Not I think. I know. I have some level of empirical data to qualify this line of thinking I have. Right? Also keeps you grounded because sometimes, well, I know they're angry. Well, how do you know they're angry? Well, I thought they were. Well, maybe it's a good opportunity to go talk to somebody then. Fifth sentence, I want. Now we're going to plant a new thought. Because up until this point, it's all kind of reflective. And now it's, what do you want? What is the gap between what you have and where you want to be? I want this. And then finally, the most important statement, I will. What is the commitment you're willing to make to yourself so that you get from where you're at to where you're going?
Well, what you've effectively done there is also tap into the way human brains make decisions.
Mhm.
The first thing is there is a thought. That thought activates a feeling.
Yep.
Feeling then triggers your endocrine system and you get an emotion. The emotion then creates the decision. And then we have this internal dialogue that justifies the decision that was emotional, but you trying to justify it using logic. We may then externalize and justify our decision to other people because we're always looking at the functional outcome, but we're also looking at the social and political impact
Mhm.
and the emotional impact on us. And then we eventually take an action. Now that can take a matter of half a second, um, or it can be much more drawn out. But if you don't understand that syntax, then you will ignore the really important signals. And I think what you're touching on here is understanding the difference between the noise and the signal and being able to
Hmm.
differentiate between the two. Fair?
100%. And what's interesting is you talked about social and political. Um, I love the Green Bay Packers football team, right? Huge fan, big fan of the Green Bay Packers. And when they lose on a Sunday, I would be frustrated till like Wednesday, right? And I realized about 10 years ago, the Green Bay Packers do not care about me nearly as much as I care about them. This is an upsided relationship. The reason I tell that is because here in America, we have a lot of political unrest. We have news outlets that are, buying for your attention. Everything out there tends to be polarizing, right? And when you use everything, it's not a good idea either. Most things are polarizing. Most things are vying for your attention, right? And so I eliminate as much noise as possible. So that means I have no notifications on my phone. I turn off or I disable every single um, channel on YouTube. I got rid of Facebook. I got rid of all these things that were creating noise in my life. And then I realized, wow, there's a lot of people that create noise around my life. So I choose not to give them a lot of my time and energy. And then I realized there's places that I go that have a lot of noise. And so I choose not to go to those places. So instead of trying to have this willpower and um, discipline to prevent the noise from coming in, instead I create structure to prevent the noise from coming in. Because the noise is going to be there either way. And that's what these sentences do. They create structure to stop the noise from coming in. Because as soon as you think and you put in your brain, oh, well, how is this going to hurt this person or that person? Now you're putting other people above yourself. How do you feel about this? What is your best? We're coming on the other side of the holiday season about a month ago, and you'll hear people all the time use victim language. Well, I have to go to this party, and no, they'll be upset if I don't go. It's like, well, how do you feel? Will you feel upset by not going? Well, no, then why are you going? Right? And that's a great question. Why are you going? Because I don't want people mad at me. Okay. So you're going only so other people don't get mad at you. You're giving other people that much power over you? People get mad just because you didn't show up? What kind of friends are these? I recently eloped. Last year I eloped. Um, we told our parents and we went and eloped. I had two people in my entire life get mad at me for eloping. Everybody else was like, that was awesome. Cool. Congratulations on being married. And there was two people in my life that were genuinely mad at me. Okay. That was a them problem, right? Not my issue, right? It was their issue. They weren't happy that I got married. They weren't happy that I was happy. They were mad that they weren't included.
Yeah. It's interesting how attachment and ego seem to be such huge drivers
Hmm.
um, in day-to-day life. And in fact, there's a fabulous book. It's out of print and has been for years, but it's called How to Run Your Own Life by Youth
Hmm.
Mininger. It trades for over $150 for a battered old hardback copy of it. And the thesis is a Martian comes down and is observing how human beings engage and interact, and talks about the separation between identity and role, and
Hmm.
what you have intrinsic control over and what's beyond your control. And I think far too often we're making decisions on the basis of incomplete, emotional, untrue information. And what we're not doing is we're not spending enough time in reflection and in being honest with ourselves.
Yep.
And the moment you start doing that, it's liberating. I was speaking to a client only today, and the simple act of journaling
Yep.
empowered him to actually see what was going on in his life, to spot patterns that were hurting him. And the net result of that is that he then had a conversation with his wife, and the two of them are much happier as a direct result of that. But his 9-year-old son was the one who really blew him away, which is essentially he came in, he overheard the conversation, and he said, Dad, you got to let go of the stuff that doesn't matter. And I think the advantage of being a 9-year-old is you haven't got all of that accumulated baggage.
The naivety is a beautiful thing. That's the Four Agreements, one of my favorite books.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Four Agreements talks about, right, when actually, and someone asked me this on stage a couple of weeks ago about growth minded versus fixed minded, and they said, well, can you reverse it? And why are we jaded, right? Why are we cynical human beings? I'm like, well, humans aren't born that way. And the argument in the Four Agreements is it's the preachers, the teachers, and the parents that have bestowed all these rules and regulations on the child, and then eventually the child breaks free. Sometimes it's in their 20s, their 30s. My mom told me a couple of years ago, about a half dozen years ago, she said it took me till I was 60 years old to start living my life instead of the life my mom wanted me to live. And her mom had been dead for 15 years at this point. This woman had been dead for 15 years, and my mom was still living up to her expectations. And so, to your point, the naivety of a 9-year-old, well, hold on. How does it? That's why I asked the question, not is it good or bad, positive or negative. I said, how does this serve you? And that's one of the questions I often ask. And so, what I really want to make sure we hit this point. There's this, again, another really a shit phrase that we've heard in this world, right? Some people say, oh, I have a problem. And they're like, oh, acknowledging is the first step. No. Acknowledging a problem is not the first step. It's the second step. The first step is reflection. Reflect, realize, regulate. So reflect. How did I show up? What's frustrating me? What's bothering me? What brings me joy, right? Leaning on those feelings. Then realize who are the right people to be around? What are the right behaviors that I'm responsible for? How am I showing up? Those are your choices, right? And then regulate, pick accordingly. So that 9-year-old said all the things by saying, Dad, what was his exact words?
It was along the lines of just let go.
Let it go. Let it go. Let it go. My wife and I had a fight the other day, first one in a long time. And we were arguing about the day before. We both wanted to spend time with each other. We were two ships passing the night. And finally I go, okay, hold on. I said, I'm done arguing about this because being right doesn't matter, right? That's all I said to her. And I said, so what are we going to do about it tonight? And then all of a sudden I was like, okay, how do we get back on that? We could spend all day arguing about what did happen. And in that moment, I decided that, you know what, I'm done with this. And she got it, right? It didn't matter who was right or wrong. Again, this is where the people say, well, who's at fault? Fault is in the past. Who is responsible moving forward? What ownership can we take? What are we accountable to or for? And so in that moment, I said, okay, I'm done with this conversation, right? And I wasn't so nice when I said that. I said, all right, I'm done with this conversation, right? I said, fine, I'm wrong. I'll be the wrong way. I don't care, right? And I kind of threw up my hands, you know. In that moment, what I was saying is, I don't want to argue with my wife because here's the deal: when I win an argument with my wife, right, that means she lost. And you know what? I don't want to date. I don't want to date. I don't want to be married to a loser. So you know what? When I win an argument with my wife, I married a loser. That doesn't sound good, right? So I never want to win an argument with my wife.
I think you've missed the most important thing, which is if you've won, you've lost as well.
You've lost way more. Again, but hold on, that is that short-term satisfaction some people want. It's like your business partner or your employee. You want to beat your employee down and tell them how useless and incompetent they are? Guess what? You're the one that hired the useless, incompetent person. Now who's the idiot? Also, your employee, who's paying who? Oh, you're paying a useless, incompetent person?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, you're a real winner, aren't you? Right?
Well, I want to build on the 4 agreements and the antithesis, because the 4 agreements are: be impeccable with your word, don't take anything personally, don't make assumptions, and always do your best. Yep. The antithesis, which is really what we've been describing here, is use language to protect yourself and say things you don't really mean, speak to justify, not to clarify, and avoid responsibility or soften the blow of reality. Make everything about yourself. Read threat where none exists. Turn feedback into attacks on your identity, and let other people's moods dictate your decisions. And then if you decide to fill the gaps with stories, what you're effectively doing is letting what others think without checking first make the decision for you. You're treating guesses as facts and acting on interpretations that haven't been tested or validated. So that's where conflict and hesitation compound. And if instead of doing your best, you do what preserves your comfort or self-image, you're hiding behind standards you failed to meet. You're using circumstances as cover, and you're avoiding being realistic. And then effort becomes conditional and regret accumulates. So there is no upside to not following those 4 agreements. And the language that you use, your inner dialogue or inner monologue, is not necessarily your friend. So have a listen and ask yourself the question: if my best friend spoke to me the way I spoke to myself, would I punch him on the nose? And the odds are very high. The answer is yes. So be your own best friend. Now, a best friend isn't mollycoddling or permissive.
Nope.
Love is tough. And someone who loves you will tell you the truth, even though you may not want to hear it. And I think one of the biggest problems here is that we tend to run away from ourselves and run away from accountability. And accountability is something that's misunderstood too, because you hold yourself accountable. No one else holds you to account. And if you're doing that, you're abdicating agency, which again is an act of self-sabotage.
Yep. When you're doing that, you're giving agency to others.
When you're doing that. So how do we use the 4 agreements so that we don't default into the negative version?
For me, especially being impeccable with your word, I have a tendency, very high, strong tendency, to say things without running them through the filter, right? It's like you get exactly what's on my mind. And so instead of preventing that, I love that about me. I love being quick-witted. I love being quick to answer questions. Instead of taking that away, instead, I take the time in my quiet time when I'm not in front of people to pre-plant thoughts, to do the work, to listen to other speakers, to listen to myself, to be bored. To be bored is a beautiful thing in this world because we have so much stimulation around us. People no longer have to be bored. And when you're bored, your brain goes places and starts opening files that you probably would have avoided, right? And so first thing I do is I want to be impeccable in my word. And in order to be impeccable in my word, reflecting in those other times is what's going to give me the opportunity in the moment to be impeccable. The second point about taking things personally, I consistently remind myself when someone says something or does something that I perceive as negative or attacking on me, I remind myself, I'm like, that's them, not me. The way they treat me is a reflection of them, not a reflection of me. And as soon as I put that into my brain, all of a sudden I can look at things objectively. Because when I focus on how I feel about the thing they did, their behavior, I'm looking for confrontation instead of saying, okay, where's this coming from? And when I take the time then, I can focus on what is the issue. Instead of the behavior of the person, what is the issue? What is the gap? And now we're talking about the issue or the gap, not about the person or what they said or what they did. To the point of assumptions, that goes back to the I know. I love being the smartest person in the room. That's like, I get off to that, you know? And so often, one of my thinking traps is making assumptions. I assume I have all the data. I assume people's intentions. And so avoiding that. And finally, the last one, as far as always doing your best, put yourself in a position to be uncomfortable consistently. Comfort is the enemy of progress. P.T. Barnum said that, one of my favorite sayings. I did a workshop a couple of years ago, and I was talking about we were talking about this big, basically a BHAG, not quite a BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal. What is the thing that is keeping you up at night? And this one guy, very timid, he volunteered. And this is like a 15-minute exercise in front of the class that we did. And it starts with the word should, another shit word, right? So I said, what should you do? And should we go from should, could, can, will, and we get to commitment. His should was sticks and leaves in his garage. They had an arborist come cut the trees down, and they took all the logs but left all the leaves and the sticks in the yard. And he dragged them in his garage, and his sticks and leaves were in his garage for 6 months. His city had a free drop off. His father in law had a trailer, and yet he did not push himself because he's like, I don't know where to go when I get there. That was his big barrier. So when it says be your best, slay the dragon. Whatever that is. You want to go on a weight loss journey? Go for a 5-minute walk. That's your best because your best is better than yesterday. The only person you're competing against is who you were yesterday. And now that's a very simple measure. Did I do better than yesterday? And here's the beautiful thing. There are going to be days where today was worse than yesterday. You know what, though? Here's the beautiful thing about that. Tomorrow, to be better than yesterday is a very low bar. Right?
Yeah.
And now be consistent. So the whole best, people have this idea, oh, I got to be my best. I got to beat this person or that person. I have to accomplish something I've never accomplished in my life. And it's like, okay, what is that? Right? At the gym, that's one more rep. You know, for people that want to wake up 1 minute earlier. One to be on time. Send out one nice text to somebody in the morning, giving them gratitude, thanking them and giving them gratitude. Journal for 1 minute. Right? Because that's your best. And it was better than yesterday. And you start compiling these better than yesterdays, all of a sudden you're going to continually raise the bar and you're going to be your best at everything. Because the rest of your life, when you do something right and something consistent, the rest of your life catches up.
Well, that also speaks to one of the rules that I always teach my clients, which is the 0.5% rule. If you improve by 0.5% a day, over the course of a year, you'll be about 300% better.
Yeah.
And it simply requires a tiny stretch and a little commitment. And if you fail to make that 0.5% a day, first of all, no one else is going to notice.
Nope.
But it's the compound effect of doing the right things well consistently over time and meaning it. If you do 1% a day, which is often a massive stretch for people, by the end of the year, you're 1,400% better off. Now, think about how we do it normally. What we normally do is we try and do these enormously big
10%. Yeah, 10% all at once. And then
yeah,
you don't do shit for a whole year.
exactly. And it's disappointing. But
Yep.
you can, if you do the 0.5% improvement every day and you journal it, what you'll find is over time, you will start to see progress. And that progress is a reward in itself. You said work is the reward.
Yep.
Well, being able to track it is important as well, because we want to feel and see progress. And I think what Andy's been touching on today is that you can easily make progress, but you need to change the language.
Hold on.
You
Right.
can
Right. Okay.
when you change the
There it
language.
is.
When you change the language,
Yes.
what you do is you release the stranglehold. So should, for example, moralizes, it creates guilt. It keeps the decision vague and socially acceptable. And should is where people park things that they're not going to do.
100%.
Could creates options and
Yep.
fantasies. And it feels productive, but really it's avoiding commitment.
Yeah, we're getting there. It's a step.
Could is brainstorming disguised as progress in most
Correct.
cases.
Yep.
Can defines capability and constraints. It forces you to see reality, and it moves stories into from stories to inventory. So can is where excuses go to die, and will is about creating commitment. It creates consequence and it makes the sentence testable. So will is where language stops being self-talk and becomes a contract with yourself.
So what I love you said about it could is it's whimsical. So one of the ways I do this exercise is I take people up on stage, say, okay, should, what is your should? Well, let's go back to that one, right? I should eat healthier. This is a woman a while back, right? I should eat healthier. I say, okay, stand in front of the room, and we did like Price is Right, where you stand there and you close your eyes and the audience yells answers, right? And it's okay, so what could you do? I say unlimited time, money, and resources. And she's like, well, I could go grocery shopping more often. I go, think bigger. Oh, I could meal prep. I said, think bigger. She's like, well, I could buy a new recipe book. I said, could you hire a chef full time? Could you have a bigger house that has a second cooking quarters and you have a full-time staff, right? Good. We built this thing up of you have unlimited time, money, and resources, right? Could you have your own garden? Yes. Okay. The whole reason we do the could part is to generate new ideas. Take us to this happy place that we've never been before because we're living in reality. And when you start in reality, your cans are going to be limited. When you start in fantasy land, right? The old, what would you do with $1 million? Well, now all of a sudden, what happens is your neurons are firing in your brain, and now your creative, confident, big brain is triggering because you remove limitations. When you keep limitations, all of a sudden you start thinking small, acting small, being small. So go big right off the bat, and it opens up, places in the recess of your brain that you otherwise haven't had access to. And so what we do is we do the coulds. Here are all the things we could do with unlimited time, energy, and resources and money. And then we go to can. Okay, now let's take this list of 20 things that are whimsical at best, and let's get to cans. How many of these can we actually put in? When I've done this exercise before, going from should to can, maybe we get like 3. When we go from should to could to can, now we get like 5 to 7. Okay, you can't hire a private chef. You can meal prep. Okay, now we can meal prep. Okay, in order to meal prep, what do we need to do? Oh, we want to go buy new Tupperware. Okay, we can go buy new Tupperware. All right. New Tupperware and meal prepping is a lot better than, oh, there's nothing I can do. I don't know what I'm doing. And so now when you create that emotion, that energy, that excitement, then all of a sudden possibilities become reality. And then when you get to the wills, what's interesting is when I get to wills, it's normally a simple thing. And the wills are things that they thought about, they've considered, they've never written it down, they've never committed to it. And they're always basic things. I say half the time when I've done the language of leadership workshop and people pick personal shoulds, it's all about weight loss and nutrition. And the commitments are the simplest things. I will meal prep. I will pack a lunch. I will go walk to the store. The one lady, I will stop buying frozen pizzas. That was her ultimate thing because she realized that she probably eats 3 to 5 frozen pizzas a week because they're easy and her kids like them. And then she buys all this produce. So she buys all the right stuff at the grocery store and she lets it go bad because pizzas are easier. She's like, I buy all the right stuff. And she goes, I eat great lunches. I go, okay, well, what's the problem? She goes, well, I get home from work and then there's always a frozen pizza in the fridge or in the freezer. So I just throw that in instead. And I go, okay. And then she like kind of looked around the room and she's like, and my kid has like 2 slices and I have the rest. I go, okay. Right. I very much appreciated how vulnerable she was in that moment. So her big mountaintop was walking down the frozen food aisle and not buying frozen pizzas.
Excellent. Andy, we've come to time, so I just want to do a quick review for the audience as well. And so this is an exercise that I think you could all do. It'll take about 5 minutes. So what's a should in your life right now that's been sitting there for months? What could have been, have you been using to look busy instead of choosing?
Mm-hmm.
And then strip it back. What can you actually do in the next 24 hours? And say it as an I will.
Mm-hmm.
Give it a day and a time. And then what word are you going to stop using so you can't wriggle out of it?
Mm-hmm.
I think that summarizes the process pretty well. Any thoughts?
No, it's beautiful. And to that final point, in the start, stop, continue methodology of change, stop has the greatest impact. And that's what this today does all about. When you stop using language that no longer serves you, it creates capacity to put in a new thought. And that's how behaviors change. When you stop behaviors that no longer serve. And it comes down to one word at a time.
Well, again, this is something that I see a direct parallel to in your day-to-day activities. If you look at the dead work, the rework, the pointless work that most sales organizations inflict on themselves, you can recover about 60 to 80% of your working week by stopping doing the stuff that does not advance you or your business. So what can you stop doing? What can you do less of? What can you start doing? What can you do more of? And what can you do differently? So these models work in different conditions and different contexts if you bother to actually stop and reflect. And the problem is that if you don't stop and reflect and you don't give yourself time for pause, then chances are you will keep doing what you've always done. And expecting a different result is the very definition of insanity. So, Andy, is there anything I should have asked? And I use that deliberately.
Should.
Is there any question that if I had, no,
See?
It's very hard, isn't it? Anyway, fuck it. I can't be asked to try and second guess because we've got to wrap up. Is there a question I should have asked that I didn't?
No, that's you know, I have a tattoo on my arm. It says, "Have faith in your fate." I show up to life, and whatever is presented in front of me is the greatest, you know, opportunity I have. And so I had no expectations coming in today. We had a great conversation. We went down a couple of rabbit holes. And the whole goal of today was that, you know, when one person teaches, 2 people learn.
Yep.
And we had the opportunity to both be teachers today. And what a beautiful thing that was.
Excellent. Thank you. So if you had a golden ticket and you could go back and whisper in the ear of the idiot Andy, age 23, what one choice bit of advice would you give him for our audience that are maybe starting out in their careers?
43, I was coming home from Iraq, lost as could be. The advice I'd given myself then in all of my 20s is, you are good enough.
Lovely. How can people get a hold of you?
Simplest person to get a hold of, LinkedIn. My phone number is right on there. You can text me, you can call me. My email address is on there. I'm not a very difficult guy to get a hold of. And I love the opportunity to meet people, have great creative conversations. That's how you and I got here today. And so you can also find me on my website, andyweins.com. Very simple to get a hold of. And the new book comes out in April called Stop Avoiding Your Numbers, The Guide to Business Owners for Financial Confidence.
Excellent. Well, I was going to ask you about the second book, so I think you've already answered it. Excellent. Andy Weins, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So this is Marcus Cauchi, once again from the Inquisitor Podcast. If you've enjoyed this, then please like, comment, share, subscribe, and do please go to Apple Podcasts or your favorite platform and leave an honest review. A 1-star is fine, a 5-star is lovely. But if you would like to be a guest and you believe that you can bring something of real value to our audience, then please do get in touch via email or as a comment on the blurb. In the meantime, stay safe and happy selling. Bye-bye.